aging parents that need special care? Our guest today is Isabelle Guarino. She is a graduate of Arizona State University, a former flight attendant, a Walt Disney World intern, and now she is the leading lady at Residential Assisted Living Academy. She has been working as the COO of the company for the last 8 years, keeping everyone in line and on task. And she has actually been featured in many magazines and articles on the topic of senior housing, and most recently was given the title as one of the most top influencers in senior housing. And she's also won Aging Media's The Future Leaders of Assisted Living Award in 2020, being two of hundreds under the age of 30 to make that list. And so we're really excited to have her here and talking about her new book, Living Legacy, and more importantly, this whole industry of residential assisted living. What is the need? What is the opportunity? How can you do good and do well at the same time? So Isabelle, welcome to the Leaders Transformation. We're glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So first of all, you started off as a flight attendant. You had another path, and then dad kind of roped you into this idea. So tell us a little bit about, I say roped, but it was more than that. And you talk a little bit about in that book, and I think it's such an inspiring story. So can you just kind of start with that and give us a little backstory how R.A.L. came to be?
Yeah. Well, when I had graduated college, I didn't really know 100% what I wanted to do yet. And I got an opportunity to become a flight attendant. So I was like, hey, travel the world. This sounds like a lot of fun. I'll do that. And in the interim, my dad, had been dealing with my grandmother who had fallen ill, and she needed assisted living. And he'd been a real estate investor his whole life. And he kind of realized, wait, I'm going to be paying $5,000 a month for her to live in one of these homes, or I could own it, be cash flowing, and she could live for free. So it just made a lot of sense for him to look deeper into residential assisted living. And as he did, he found no suitable options in upstate New York for her. So we went back to Arizona, where we were living at the time, and really vowed to make, a better version for her. He stumbled upon this industry, which is thriving here in Arizona, and he purchased his first assisted living home with the intent to move my grandmother in. She passed before he could, but as he was getting the home up and running, he started to really fall in love with the industry and the seniors. And during this time, I was living with him back at home because I wasn't making much money as a flight attendant. And I started to ask him, what are you doing? What's going on here? Hanging out with old people all day? What is this? And the more and more that we talked and got to, I got to overhear conversations or see numbers, the more intrigued I was. So eventually it led to me asking, or him asking, however we want to say, to become his assistant. And really the rest is history.
Well, and you talk a lot about the fact that you wanted to be in the background, and somehow you ended up in the foreground of this. So tell us a little bit about that experience, because there's a big difference between what you were doing then. Yeah.
Yes. So for 8 years, I was his integrator, as we'll call it. So it's basically the right hand lady or man to a visionary, right? The visionary is coming up with the ideas, but doesn't really know how to detail them out and bring them to fruition. And I was like, oh, this is so my skill set. I know exactly how to do this. And we worked really well together doing that for about 8 years. He got to be, the face and the brand and all that good stuff. And when he passed in 2021, it was kind of like, okay, what do we do? Like, do we shut down? Do we just stop? Do we pay a hired gun to come do this? We literally just felt so hands tied. If you run a business or know of a business, it's like the Geico lizard dying, right? It's like, okay, what do you do, right? Do we get another stand-in lizard? So it was just crazy. It's like, how do we keep doing this? And one of our business coaches was basically like, you could do it. And I was like, no, I can't. And it took a lot of, just people around me saying hey, we believe in you, and just me practicing and getting prepared for that. But I've been so blessed that I guess it was a secret talent of mine that I could be, a public speaker, and that I actually really enjoyed connecting with audiences and helping them start their own businesses, because I really thought behind the scenes was it for me. And now that, I've been able to take over center stage and lead the company as the visionary, I'm blessed that it's been, going absolutely amazing. And it's totally a God-given skill that I would have never known unless I was pushed off the ledge.
Yeah. Sometimes we need to be pushed off because we're not
Yeah,
going to jump off on our own. So,
literally.
yeah. I love what you were talking about and in your book, and even just as we were talking previous to this interview, about the idea of doing good and doing well.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a huge opportunity to have a business that's cash flowing well, all of that. But let's talk about the need
Yeah.
that it's actually meeting in the marketplace.
Absolutely. So obviously for us, it started at home and we weren't even aware of how big of a need senior housing is. But currently there's less than 1 million beds available for assisted living. And we're 1.3 million beds short. And the
Wow.
baby boomers they're not in assisted living yet, right? It's the silent generation. There's 47 million in the silent generation. And I want to say 76 million in the baby boomer generation. So we're about to almost double the amount of seniors who need housing and care in the next 10, 20 years. And we're currently 1.3 million beds short. It's a massive crisis or mega opportunity, depending on what side of the coin it flips on for you. So it's definitely an opportunity to do good and do well. There's such a need. And I always say this, right? You can make money a million different ways, but this opportunity, you can make money and make an impact. Not only are you helping the seniors in your life and your community, you're helping the caregivers, you're helping the families that come along with the seniors. It's really impact all the way around. And it's a job that you can make great money at, but feel really good about, and I love that. To me, that's so much more impactful than just making money, because we can do that a million different ways. But at the end of the day, fulfillment, significance, those are things that matter, and that we end this earth saying, like, did I do good? And you want to be able to tick that box and feel good about that.
Yes, I had a limited experience in this area. My parents have both passed away. They both passed away suddenly. So I never had to do this,
Yeah.
going through and finding a place for them. And I live in the US now, and they were still back in Canada. And so I was in my mind thinking that as they're getting older, how are we going to handle that? My brother's there. Okay, maybe they can live with him for a while. And I remember my mom and I going to visit a friend that was in a nursing home, and she had Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And we're walking up, and this was a great facility, but we were walking up, and she turned to me and she said, "Don't ever let me end up in a place like this."
Mhm.
And I thought, man, I hope I can honor that. But what do you do? What do
Yeah.
you do? They need care.
Yeah.
This is beyond my scope. It was beyond the kids' scope of our friend. And so what do you do? And then later on, being down here, I'm in San Diego County. And so I had a client who had a few of these assisted living care, like the residential homes,
Yeah.
and 6 or 8 in each of the homes. And it was kind of like my first experience with that. And what a stark difference
Totally.
between the two. And so talk a little bit about, what is available, and when we talk about filling a need and doing good, where this actually meets a need that's not currently being provided by those bigger facilities. Not
Yeah.
just the shortage, but even the care and all of that.
Yes. And I'm sorry for your loss. It's not a fun club to be in. So, when it comes to the level of care, they're vastly different in facilities versus homes. Unfortunately, in facilities, it's typically a 20 to 1, 20 seniors to 1 caregiver. I've seen 30 to 1. I've seen at night 50 to 1. One person can't take care of 20 people. They can't take care of 30 or 50 people. So the quality of care is vastly different. In residential assisted living homes, you're typically seeing 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. So the ratio of care is a lot better, which means the quality of care is better. you're hearing horror stories of, families who their loved one has been double diapered because they couldn't get to them. They couldn't change them. And so, oh, let's just do this and we'll get to them later. Or they fell and they weren't found until 8 hours later. All these crazy things happening. And it's not that those caregivers are bad people and ours are great. It's literally the system is set up to fail them. They care more about the money, right, than they do actually about the seniors. And the facility can be beautiful and have pickleball courts and a movie theater and a salsa dancing studio. But at the end of the day, that care ratio is really one of the biggest, most important things to be looking at when you are choosing care for a loved one. I'll also say this, right? Most of us grew up in a home, not a home-like setting, a home. And so when we have to move into this hospital-like feel facility, it's just not familiar and it doesn't feel very comforting. It doesn't give you a lot of dignity towards the end of life. And it becomes even more confusing, right? Why am I here? What's going on? Am I okay? Especially when it looks hospital-esque. So being in a home where you grew up in a home, it gives you a lot more comfort. And as the seniors age and the family members go through so many emotions, right? Guilt and they're upset and they wish that their loved one could revert back to a younger version of themselves. It's just so important to remember the emotionality involved in all of this. And when we do our intake with the families, I want to hear their stories. I want to hear what's going on so that I can make sure to give that family special attention and special care, because it's so important. When your senior loved one is just a number in a building, it's kind of impossible to do that. So the quality of care just greatly, greatly differs when we're talking assisted living facilities versus residential assisted living homes.
And I can imagine also for the caregivers themselves that
Mhm.
they get the opportunity to work in an environment where they experience more peace and joy as well, because it's also the environment that they work in as well. Yeah.
100%.
Talk about RAL, what you actually do. So you started off with, with your home. This was for your grandmother.
Yeah.
And now you also teach, and there's so much more that you do.
Yeah. So we kind of transitioned. We still own and operate our 3 care homes here in the Phoenix area, but now we teach and train other investors, entrepreneurs, medical professionals, really whoever wants to get involved, whoever has the right heart to get involved, to start, own, and operate these care homes. We teach it from the real estate perspective as well as the business perspective. So some of our students, they just own the real estate and they're leasing it to an operations company who's going to run the business within the home, for lack of a better word. And others, they choose to own the real estate and own the business and operate both. And so we kind of teach all perspectives of that and how someone could get involved, because there is such a need. And I always joke, I'm like, raise your hand if you're getting older and know someone who is. Like, we're all aging and everyone's going to deal with this one way or another. Either you're going to be lying in the bed or writing the check for someone who is, or you could be owning the real estate, owning the business, having a solution for your loved ones, for yourself, and leaving your kids a cash flowing business and blessing that they can carry on for generations to come. So there's so many ways to get involved, but I love to teach people all the different ways how they can.
So how do you know if you're someone that this would be suited for this? Because
Mm.
not everybody, I can imagine that not everybody is going to be suited for this. I mean, yeah, you can look at it from the real estate opportunity and owning the property, and that's one thing. But in
Yeah.
terms of being involved in this industry, what are some of the qualities that are needed? And you've seen so many people, I'm sure you've seen it be successful and not be successful, and what's
Yeah.
the formula for for at least for setting yourself up for success?
Yes. When we're teaching, we're really teaching from ownership perspective. So ownership of real estate or ownership of operations company. So you're not necessarily working on a day-to-day basis with the seniors, but I will say you are hiring those positions. So you need to know, what to look for and what to hire in those people. And the number one quality I'd say for them is patience. When it comes to seniors, you got to be patient. You're going to repeat yourself. You're going to have to speak slowly sometimes. So patience for anyone who's working in the home with the seniors. But for those people who want to be on the ownership side, something that I look for is grit. We've had successful students who are 22 years old who are 72 years old, literally. Our students look so different. They're from all across the country, all walks of life, all different backgrounds and experience. But the number one thing they have in common is grit, because this is not an easy industry to get into. There's a lot of rules and regulations. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. And the reality is, I love that. And you guys should too, all the listeners should too, because you don't want just anyone being able to get into this industry. You want people who are willing to get the license and get the extra fire suppression and do this and do that to make sure your loved one's going to be safe, going to be cared for, going to have the proper things in place to make sure it's the best experience possible. So grit, because it's difficult. There's a lot of roadblocks, a lot of hoops to jump through. And I would also say, you can be young. We have a lot of young, successful students, but it can be an opportunity that can cost more money to get into than just wholesale or fix and flip, or something that's maybe on the lower end of real estate investing as far as investment need. We highly encourage you don't use your own money anyways, so it shouldn't really affect you. But I know that sometimes having, dealing with numbers in the millions of dollars can scare some new investors. So I would say, experienced investors and people who have grit is a great thing to look for.
And so how long does it actually take for it to start to cash flow? Let's say you are not building from scratch, but you have a convert an existing home.
Yeah, if you're there's 4 ways, so that's perfect, because building is one of them. Converting a single family home into one is another. And I like to say, depending on the renovation, it should be about 6 to 12 months until you're fully up and running, cash flowing on converting a single family.
Okay. And you mentioned it a little bit in the book. There's so much information in the book. By the way, I'm just going to do a plug for your book, Living Legacy. It's on Amazon. It's fantastic. If anybody is interested in this, brilliant resource for that. You talk a little, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit here about some of the challenges, the barriers. So for example, if you're going to convert a residential home, a single family home in an area, let's say a suburb, there's going to be potentially issues of running a business there and neighbors not wanting those types of businesses. So talk a little bit about some of the things that people can that need to take into consideration.
Yes, when we talk about roadblocks, that there's a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
So when you're doing this in a suburban neighborhood, obviously your neighbors are mom, dad, 2 kids, and a dog. So they may not feel very comfortable with you putting a business into their neighborhood. They're going to presume there's going to be a lot of traffic, or, hearses or fire trucks or this or that, all these different things that they have presumptions that are going to happen. The reality is that it's all about educating them. We have a ton of statistics that can basically prove and show that there's no more, fire trucks or anything coming than if a regular senior just lived next door to you. Because if a 105-year-old falls, guess who's coming? The fire trucks, right? And if they fall in an assisted living, guess who's coming? The fire trucks. So it's kind of discriminatory against elderly, but because of the Federal Fair Housing Act, which is a federal law, it trumps any city, state, county, angry neighbor, or HOA who tries to say that you can't do this in a neighborhood. Not saying that they're not going to try to fight you. Sometimes they do. And it is really lack of education, because it's not much different than having a regular senior live next to you. But I will say, I actually think we're great neighbors. You have 24/7 awake staff. And seniors, cute as they are, love to sit and look out the window and see who's driving by, what's happened in the neighborhood. We're like the best neighborhood watch ever. You go on vacation, we'll take your trash out, whatever you need. And on Halloween, you better believe we have full-size candy bars. So I think we're great neighbors, but it's all about educating them. And I think letting them in, letting them see the home. And once they see it, they're like, oh, this is like an upscale, luxurious home. Like, I want to move my mom in, right? And a lot of times we do see that transition transition happen, someone going from being vehemently against it to being the biggest fan, having their loved one live in the home. So it's
Right
great.
next door. Yeah.
Literally.
That's perfect. I mean, how much closer can it get? So that's
Yeah,
awesome. And having the care that they need in that
exactly.
process. So I've had a family business. I've been part of a family business.
Yeah.
And I remember also my dad owned garage businesses, and then they got involved in a home-based business, which grew substantially. And I ended up partnering with them. And there's a lot of family dynamics that can go on. And I know that you worked with your dad. You
Yeah.
also mentioned in the book that your brother is involved in the business, or at least was.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of
Yeah.
family dynamics there. And so talk a little bit about some of the challenges of from that perspective. How do you deal with family in
Yeah.
business successfully?
I think that I have a unique experience because some other people who I've talked to who work in family business, they grew up in a family business. And so they were almost, their parents were like, you're gonna take this over, right? You're gonna run this pizza shop when you get older. And for us, it wasn't like that at all. My dad always did his own thing as an entrepreneur. And as we got older, we asked to become involved, and we kind of became involved later in life. So working with him was always amazing. Like, we'd butt heads, but we'd have so much love and forgiveness and compassion for one another. And we worked really well together. But siblings are siblings, and you're always going to fight with your siblings. So for sure, I work with both my brothers and my sister, and there's always difficulties because it's hard to not take things from the past, right? You're always messy. You never show up on time. You always do this. And the always and nevers can't live in family business because we can't be taking those things from our history with each other to pull them in and negatively shine a light on one another. But I will say we can take something from history. I know that my sister naturally goes negative. She just, if you ask her something, she's going to say no before she says yes, right? That's just who she is. Well, I know that about her from being her sister for 30 plus years. And to me, that's actually a beautiful thing in business because now I know when I come to her, she's going to always say no first. And then I'm going to need the specific reasoning as to why. And if I didn't know her and she was a coworker, that probably pissed me off. I'd be like, oh my gosh, she always shuts down my ideas. She never gets my vision. But because I know this background info, I can use it to actually have us move forward in a more productive way. And I can bring the right things I need to the table for that conversation. So I think family business pros and cons always, it does not always work out. I mean, I've had to fire my mother-in-law. I've had to fire friends, my brother-in-law's sister, all sorts of people. It's not always fun. But the biggest thing is just keeping those relationships intact in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. And then really trying to leave everyone's past mistakes at the door, but take what you know about them to be a helper for you, to be a benefit for you in your work relationship with them.
So that's got to be a story. I can just imagine. There's lots of good stories there. To
Oh,
protect the innocent, we won't go there. But um, talk about the importance of mission. A lot of times when companies grow
yeah,
and the next generation takes over, the mission sometimes gets lost.
yeah,
You get it, you maybe get enamored by the numbers or by the accolades. And I listed a couple of them, and there's many who've been very successful and gotten a lot of notoriety for this. How do you maintain that mission? And then even when you have to fire your family member, that it's not because of your own preference, but it's actually because of what you're focusing on, what you're accomplishing,
yeah.
that is really driving you.
Yeah, I think that the two things I always keep in mind is everyone needs a KPI, right? A number, a standard, a something that they're going to be held to. Some people in some departments are going to have way more, and some people are going to have less, but everyone needs something that we can hold them to say, are you doing a good job or a poor job? And what can we do to improve this? I think when people get into leadership positions, they think they shouldn't be held accountable to KPIs. And that couldn't be further from the truth. They also need to be held accountable and have everyone have access to seeing whatever it is that they are being held accountable to. So something which leads into the second one, which is, I feel like it sounds cliche, but you have to stay humble. I would not be where I am without my team, no doubt about it. And every time that I succeed, I mean, this weekend we had an incredible event. We sold a lot of product, right? And it was an amazing event. And I'm getting all these text messages from the team just saying like, hey, congrats, amazing, great job. And everyone I'm writing back, it couldn't have been done without you guys. And I'm not saying it to say it. I'm saying it because I genuinely believe it. If I was the only one there, we wouldn't have done that. There's no way we would have done that. It goes from every single person along the line, from the one who emailed to confirm, who shook their hand when they arrived, handed them their name tag, pointed out where the honey for the hot tea was, right? All the way to the person who made the sale and closed the deal. Like every person involved is how we get where we are. And I'll never forget that, because a blessing for me is that I did do every single one of those jobs. And I know how important those pieces to the puzzle are. Now that I'm the Geico lizard, the face, right? A lot of times the glory and recognition goes to me, but I really always try to turn it around and shine it back on my team, because they are the true rock stars and they're the only reason that we're successful and that I even have the ability to carry on this legacy and carry on this mission. And I'm so honored to be able to even attempt to, live in my dad's footsteps and carry this forward. But truly every day, it's just a mission to be a living legacy, to be what he wanted and needed this company to be for the world, for senior housing, for our communities. And I'm just honored to even get to take a whack at it.
That's awesome. Yes. And humility, I think, is one of the most important qualities of a leader, because everything else is kind of predicated on that. It's like integrity. It's one of those things. It's not just a yes and, it's a foundational piece. If you don't have that, the rest kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
So that is so good. I'd love to hear from your perspective as a young woman in your 30s. I think you said you're in your 30s now. And you're leading this company, and there's been some challenges, I'm sure, along the way, just in you stepping into your father's footsteps and leading and gaining the respect that you need as a woman in business. And, there's a lot of talk nowadays about women in business and some of the struggles they face. I have my own experience with it. I'd love to hear your experience with that and how you handle some of those challenges that you face.
Yeah, it's actually been really interesting because, I think specifically in my industry, and I don't mean senior housing industry, I mean real estate education industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's predominantly older white men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go into these rooms of masterminds or different events, they all look like my dad looked. And I don't look like that. I don't sound like that. I don't act like that. I'm blessed that they're very kind to me, but I use being a woman as like my secret superpower, right? A man is not going to walk in a hot pink suit. Probably, right? The odds are probably against him, but I'll walk in a hot pink suit. And all these guys listen, if there was a new business owner who's a 50-year-old man, or me who's a new business owner, and I'm a young woman and I'm wearing something fun and bright that's true to me, the odds of who they're going to come up to talk to, who they're going to want to encourage, who they're going to want to inspire and say, can I give you some advice? It's me. It's me all day. And so I use the things that make me different, being young, being a woman, to get them to tell me advice and help me along my way. And I think it's a cool thing that I can be, one of some of these rooms, there'll be literally 500 people and I'm one of 3 women. And so it really is like a secret superpower. Some guys will never come talk to you, but a lot of guys will say, let me help you. And I'm never shy to ask for help. I'm always like, tell me everything, because they've been in the game longer and they might know better than me. And if they don't, take it with a grain of salt, but I'm happy to learn from them. And if they want to, oh, you're a woman, or, oh, you're young, let me help you out. And some people would take that defensively and like, I don't need advice. I don't need anything. I'm the total opposite. I'm like, give it to me, pile it on. I want to hear all the advice, because then in those conversations, they start asking, what are our numbers, or what's this or what's that? And when they hear that we're doing pretty good, they're like, oh, do you want to partner on this? Oh, are you looking for financing over here? And now they want to help me even more. If I would have had my ego up and been defensive, I wouldn't have gotten those handouts. So I will always dress true to myself. I'll always be true to myself. I'm never going to pretend that I'm older than I am. I'm never going to try to be one of the guys. Like, I'm a female and I'm young and I'm here, and help me if you want. I'm happy to talk to you. And if you don't, have a great day.
Oh, I love that. I love that because you're turning it around. You're turning around. It's all perspective. What you focus on expands. And so when you focus on that, you get those opportunities. It's like seeing, it's such a principle of entrepreneurship anyway, is just to see the opportunities around you rather than seeing the obstacles, seeing the things that can stand against you. And I love that. So talk a little bit about, so you mentioned about your programs.
Yeah.
You've got some different offerings and so forth. So tell us what you have available if somebody says, I want to learn more about this.
Yeah, we have an online home study course. It's about 12 hours of content that teaches you how to find an assisted living home, fund it, and fill it. So really the basics on getting started. We also host live in-person 3-day trainings in Phoenix, Arizona, about every 6 to 8 weeks, that takes that online course and juices it up on steroids. We go crazy. It's me and about 8 of my past students who've now opened homes. They're back to teach and train you exactly how to get your assisted living home up and running. And you can find out more about both of those at RAL101.com. You can also download a free webinar, or schedule a call with me or one of my team members there to chat about any questions that you have.
Beautiful. And as an entry point, I know you mentioned about using other people's money, which is obviously a great, and recommended first and foremost.
Yeah.
What would somebody be looking at to even kind of entertain this as an option?
As far as investing in it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think most of our students, their packages that I've seen, their presentations, what they're getting in front of investors, usually have $100,000 minimum as far as what they're looking for in investors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so we make sure that we're sending the right people
Yeah.
to you that have the means to be able to get involved in, or the means to be able to bring some other people into that as well, depending on where they're at. So this is so good. Well, we're going to make sure that all of this is in the show notes, links to all of your information in the show notes. You've got tremendous resources. You also have your academy there as well. So it's the online and the offline. So we'll make sure that that's all in the show notes. Isabelle, thank you so much. I know it goes by fast. There's so many questions. Your book answers so many questions. And so I'm just going to recommend that everybody get a copy of that book, Living Legacy. It's on Amazon. And again, we'll make sure a link is in the show notes. Is there anything that we didn't cover or that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I think that as we chatted last week, you shared that your listeners are really, looking for opportunities to be leaders in their community, make a difference and make an impact. And personally, I think if they're looking for any sort of investment opportunity or job to do that, then this could be a really great thing. So our company motto is to do good and do well. Our mission is to positively impact 10 million seniors through residential assisted living. And if any of these things are kind of clicking, then I highly suggest definitely download the book, check out the training. We'd love to have you guys. We're always looking for people who have the right heart, the right passion. So if it's speaking to you, it's speaking to you for a reason. And I was thrilled to be able to be on this webinar because I love what you guys stand for. I think it matches so well with what we do.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you. And I always say that leaders of transformation take action. And so I'm going to encourage our listeners, take action. If this resonates with you, you know what? Take action. If there's somebody that maybe you know of that has a loved one, maybe it's for you, maybe it's for you to pass on. I also think about this idea of legacy. Leaders of transformation leave legacies. And so, what is the legacy? Ask yourself, if it's not this, what is it? What
Mhm.
is the legacy that you're leaving for the next generation, for your kids, for those people that look up to you? And even if they're not your kids, but people that look up to you, what are you leaving for them? And teaching them how to make a difference in the world. So it's not just, yes, you can do good and do well. It's not just about making money. You can make money and do well. It's a yes and conversation. And so I would encourage you to consider that and take the steps that you need to learn more about either whether it's this or whether it's whatever it is. And as I said, also share it. Share this with a friend because maybe there's somebody else that you know. I know so many people that have been and or are in the process of finding care for their loved ones. And so maybe that's not just, maybe that's a different question. Ask yourself a different question rather than just, how can I find a place for my loved one? Maybe it's looking at it and saying, where's the opportunity here? What is God telling me about this? That maybe, hey, I need to look at it from a bigger perspective as to just like Isabelle, just like her dad Gene did, look at it and saying, hey, wait a second, there's a bigger play at going on here to consider. And so I encourage you to share it with those that you know that might be interested in this. We appreciate you being here and listening to us and tuning in every week. And we look forward to seeing you next week because we're going to have another guest on this show that's going to be sharing how they're making a difference. And we just want to continue to support you in being the leader of transformation that you're capable of being. So until then, have a great day.